Ka tira tēnā rā tātou katoa, kei te haere tonu, te whare e tēnei ata, I runga te tukungi ho rātou mā te wāhi ngaro, matua tama wairua tapu ngāna hirapono, te maanga he tautoko mai, ai nei, ake nei, ai. The House is resumed for the extended sitting. I call on Government Order of the Day, number 1.
Maniapoto Claim Settlement Bill, committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill. Mr. Chairman.
Members, the House is in committee on the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill. I'll remind members that it will be helpful for members to ask multiple questions, if they have them, of the member in charge during their call. Members, we come first to the debate on part 1.
Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Andrew Little.
Mr. Chair, I seek leave for all questions to be taken as one.
Is there any objection? There is no objection.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just for the purpose of many in the House, we have a technical process to go through. There are some very minor amendments that have to be made to the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill, largely that reflects changes in other legislation that have happened since the deed was signed. So there is an order paper, a supplementary order paper in my name. It's supplementary order paper number 235. It makes those minor and technical changes that I talked about. The first concerns, this is not an order in which they appear in the bill. The first concerns auditing requirements. The second clarifies the date of transfer of emissions units. And the third is a change to the name of the relevant health authority, which follows the High Order Healthy Futures Act, which we passed earlier this year. Clauses 203 and 212 of the bill require the final financial report of the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board and the Maniapoto Fisheries Trust to be audited by the Office of the Auditor General. But as these bodies, the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board and the Maniapoto Fisheries Trust, are not public entities, it's not appropriate or required for the Auditor General to carry out that audit. That reflects changes made to the Māori Trust Boards Act 1955. So that requirement is removed. The second point, as I said, relates to forestry emissions, so the emissions that accrue for certain forests, because there will be rights to Crown Forest licensed land transferred to Maniapoto. The practice has been for the rights to the units to transfer at the time of settlement. The Forestry Emissions Unit Trust advised the government early this year that the law appears to be that the right to those units doesn't accrue until legal title to the land is passed. But as we find with many settlements and the transfer of Crown forestry land, that can take up to 5 years, which would mean that the EU would miss out on the benefit of those units. So the amendment in this SOP means that the transfer of those emissions units happens on settlement, not on transfer of title of the land. And then the final change is the reference to the Waikato District Health Board that was in the original version of the bill is now changed to Health New Zealand, which is the legal name of the entity Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand, which has taken over the responsibility for all the old district health boards. And so that change has been made as well. None of the changes affects the redress package. They're all very minor, and the changes have all been agreed between the negotiating parties. On that basis, Mr. Chair, I commend the bill to the House with those technical changes.
The question is that the Minister's amendments set out on SOP number 235 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that parts 1 to 7, schedules 1 to 6 and clauses 1 and 2 as amended stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I'll report this bill without amendment. Sorry, with amendment.
The House is resumed. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, the committee has considered the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill and reports it with amendment. Mr. Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. In accordance with a determination of the Business Committee, this bill is set down for third reading immediately.
Mr.
The
Speaker.
Honourable Andrew Little.
Mr. Speaker, I present a legislative statement on the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website. The Honourable Andrew Little.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill be now read a third time. Tākiri mai ana te ata, ki rongo o ngā kau mā rohi rohi, ko rehi ana te manu kaupapa, ka ao awatea, tihe Māori ora. E mihi ana ki a koutou ku tau mai nei i rongo i te karanga o te kaupapa o te rā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. E mihi ana ki te honga mate, haere atu rā. Ki a tātou te honga ora, tēnā tātou. Kia whakamanawatia ngā mana o enei whenua e tu ahuru nei, tēnei au o tēra mātou te kāwanatanga e mihi nei ki te kaupapa o te wā. Maniapoto, ko hikoi koutou te hikoi roa ki a tai mai ki tēnei rā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, this is a significant day for Maniapoto and for the Crown. I'm honoured to move the Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill to be enacted into law and for Maniapoto to finally receive the benefits of a settlement that has been long, hard fought for and which is long overdue. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Last week, Parliament adjourned in order for this House and New Zealanders to pay their respects to Her Majesty. But last week we were scheduled to have this reading in the House, and so much effort has had to go into rescheduling, not so much for this House, but for the many representatives of Maniapoto who are here today. And I want to acknowledge the patience and understanding of those who've had to reorganise their schedules in order to be here for this third reading today. It has allowed us to appropriately mark our respects for Her Majesty and appropriately pay respect to Maniapoto and this significant day for you. Mr. Speaker, we are joined in the House this morning by Maniapoto who have travelled to Wellington from all parts of the motu to witness this final reading of their settlement bill. And I want to extend again my warm welcome to you all, not just to those in the House, but those who are watching at Pipatia Marae, and those who are watching at home in the Rohi, Te Roho Potai, because we know just how significant this bill is and how significant this reading is. This is a momentous occasion and is testament to the significance of the settlement to your iwi and actually to the whole of Aotearoa, New Zealand. I acknowledge Te Nehi Nehi Nui, the post-settlement governance entity of Maniapoto, and all members of the Maniapoto negotiating team. Maniapoto representatives in the House today include Bella Takiari-Brame, Chair of Te Nehi Nehi Nui, Matua Tifa Bell, former Chair of the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board, Matua Pat Stafford, and other co-Matua Trust Board members and staff. I also want to acknowledge the tupuna who began this settlement journey for Maniapoto and who are no longer with us today. This settlement could not have happened without the determination and dedication of all those involved. I acknowledge my colleagues in the House who whakapapa to Maniapoto, especially the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, the former lead negotiator for Maniapoto, who began the negotiation process and for whom the settlement carries special significance. I acknowledge the previous Minister for Treaty of Waitangi negotiations, the Honourable Chris Finlayson, who began the settlement journey with Maniapoto. And I acknowledge all my colleagues in the House, those who were there this morning at Pakitia Marae, to welcome Maniapoto and to welcome Mangarongo, the taonga that Maniapoto has lent this House for the period of 5 years as an expression of their trust in this House and the Crown. As we celebrate this milestone, it's important to reflect on where we have come from. In 1840, your tupuna signed the treaty at Kawhia and at the heads of the Waikato River. Maniapoto rangatira, including Taunui Hikaka and Haupokia Te Pakaru, put their trust in the Crown and the commitments that the Crown then made. But the Crown abused this trust. And over the last 180 years, the Crown repeatedly breached the solemn promises it made under Te Tiriti. It indiscriminately killed and injured your people during the Waikato Wars, including women and children who were non-combatants. One such event, when the Crown attacked Rangiawhia Pa, was so atrocious. We are now working with your whanaunga, separate from your settlements, to address this mamai. Following confrontations with the Crown, it subsequently labelled your people as rebels and confiscated land in which you had interests. But despite strained economic circumstances, you provided shelter and manakitanga to your whanaunga who were displaced by the wars and by raupati, a responsibility which the Crown discharged. It's to the Crown's great shame that it treated you with such disdain and disrespect. In these circumstances, it's understandable that you enacted a puru or aukati to preserve mana whakahaere over your rohe. Your dedication to keep your lands and people safe, both then and today, is resolute and is a quality to be admired. Over the 1880s, the Crown and Maniapoto engaged in negotiations and agreements to remove the aukati, manage Maniapoto land, and allow the passage of the North Island Main Trunk Railway to Ara Uturongo. These agreements were known as Te Ohaki Tapu. As described by the esteemed rangatira Riwi Maniapoto, Te Ohaki Tapu was like the planting of a tree of goodwill so that both parties could enjoy its fruits. But again, the Crown dishonoured its promises. The railway was supposed to bring prosperity to your tupuna, and the Crown was to only purchase as much land as was required for its construction. So the aukati was withdrawn, construction began on Te Ara o Turongo, and the vast tide of Crown purchasing swept into Te Nehenui. And that's why the symbolism of so many of Maniapoto who have come to Whanganui Tara today by train is so important. It reflects what happened at that time. It's right that the Crown atones for the pain and suffering it has caused your people. The Crown will deliver its long overdue apology at Te Tokanganui Noho Marae on the 4th of December this year, following the 150th anniversary of their great wharenui. And I look forward to accompanying the Prime Minister as she delivers that apology. You have brought with you, as I said before, the Taiaha Maungarongo. He will be on display at Parliament for the next 5 years. This Taiaha has been used by Maniapoto to guard the boundaries of the aukati. When the aukati was withdrawn in 1885, the rangatira Wahanui gifted Maungarongo to the Crown, symbolising the coming of peace between the Crown and Maniapoto. We regard Maniapoto's offer to lend the Taiaha to Parliament for 5 years as a gesture of reconciliation. This taonga is a symbol of our renewed partnership. Maniapoto's association with their whenua is central to their history. Maniapoto have a deeply felt responsibility as kaitiaki in their rohe that has been passed down through the generations. No settlement package can ever fully compensate Maniapoto for the magnitude of loss you have suffered. It's a testament to your extraordinary grace that Maniapoto have chosen to accept the current package and move towards a period of reconciliation with the Crown. With $165 million in financial redress and a commitment from the Crown to establish a true treaty partnership which supports the aspirations of the iwi, I'm confident that Maniapoto will have the means to chart their own path. Mr. Speaker, I express gratitude to the Maniapoto kaumātua and tupuna who took the first steps towards reconciliation. They had a clear vision, and I deeply regret that many are no longer with us to witness this momentous occasion where their vision becomes a reality. I must acknowledge the hard work of the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board, in particular its two chairs throughout negotiations, Tifa Bell and Keith Aiken. Negotiations can be long and difficult. However, through this time, you did not compromise on the values and aspirations at the heart of this settlement, and you worked tirelessly to persist to achieve the best for your people. I have absolute faith that Te Nehe Nui will continue to lead Maniapoto with the same foresight and integrity, and I wish the new chair of Te Nehe Nui, Bella Takiari Brame, and her team well. I want to also thank and acknowledge all the Crown agencies who worked on the settlement and the Chief Crown Negotiator, David Tapsell, for leading the Crown team. Lastly, I thank all the people of Maniapoto for your strength, determination and dedication in carrying this important kaupapa. Today, we reaffirm the Maniapoto Crown relationship. Your strength and independence means you do not need the Crown to guide you. It's important that the Crown respects your mana whakahaere as we grow our partnership. Today marks a new beginning in realising the promises made to Maniapoto, and it's my sincere hope that this settlement and new partnership, based on mutual trust, respect and cooperation, will provide for the future well-being and prosperity of Maniapoto. Kia tau ko te maungarongo, kia tātou katoa, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Maniapoto Claim Settlement Bill to the House. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Ko te pātai kia whakaaetia te mōtene, I call Joseph Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koe e te manga o te whare, e huri noa i te whare nei, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Tēnei te mihi, e nau mai, haere mai te iwi o Ngāti Maniapoto. Nō reira, auria mai o whakaako ki te kaupapa, e hui hui a takata, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Mr. Speaker, it is a pleasure to rise as the member for Southland and the National Party's spokesperson for treaty negotiations in support of this legislation's third and final reading. To the elders, leaders and members of Ngāti Maniapoto who are witnessing this auspicious and significant moment, either here within Parliament, from their homes, or wherever in the world they may be, I extend a very warm welcome. This settlement, this bill and this process is about you, it's about your tupuna, it's about your uri. Ngāti Maniapoto have waited a very long time to reach this point, especially since it's taken over 30 years to complete the process between Ngāti Maniapoto and the Crown, but obviously the story goes back much further. Mr. Speaker, there are many things that we can disagree upon in this House, but one thing that we agree on across all parties is this process of the treaty settlement. And I think that is a very special thing that we can reflect on and see as we have all the members of Ngāti Maniapoto at the House today. The finalisation of the settlement and its journey through the House of Representatives is testament to the decades of hard work and negotiations between Ngāti Maniapoto and the Crown, and signifies the beginning of a new relationship between both parties based on trust, cooperation and a commitment to living up to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Also note that this bill completes the settlement process which began under the former Treaty Negotiations Minister Christopher Finlayson under the then National Lead Government. And I note that the then Minister Finlayson went to Kāwhia to meet Ngāti Maniapoto elders and negotiators and visited sites of significance and then signed the agreement in principle with Ngāti Maniapoto in 2017. I recognise the leadership and efforts of the current Minister of Treaty Negotiations, Andrew Little, who has shepherded this process through to completion today. I also acknowledge the efforts of the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta as former lead negotiator for whom this is of special significance. We also acknowledge the tireless efforts of Ngāti Maniapoto negotiators and as Minister Little said, the tupuna who have done much work over the years prior, and some, unfortunately, who cannot be here to see this today, but we remember them. And also to the Te Arawhiti officials who have worked tirelessly as well through this journey. Ngāti Maniapoto's legacy is etched into the history of the King Country and into Aotearoa New Zealand. Had it not been for the generosity of Ngāti Maniapoto leaders in times past, the construction of the North Island Main Trunk Railway through the King Country, which was begun in 1885, would have been delayed for many a year. I note the significance and the symbolism and the fact that many members of Ngāti Maniapoto have travelled here today by train to witness this historic moment. And I also note the extraordinary significance of the Taonga Taiaha Maunga Rongo, which is being entrusted by Maniapoto to be cared for here in Parliament for 5 years, to symbolise that this is a relationship that is beginning on trust between the Crown and Ngāti Maniapoto. And this is a powerful symbolism of that agreement. Mr. Speaker, the Maniapoto settlement package is one of the largest ever negotiated. It includes financial redress, which will in total be worth approximately $177 million, relationship agreements with various Crown agencies, the transfer of 36 sites back to Maniapoto's cultural redress, the first right to purchase Crown lands in the future, an agreed historical account, an acknowledgement of treaty breaches, and a formal apology for those breaches. Ngāti Maniapoto's historical grievances relate to loss of life and conflicts with the Crown and bearing the costs of the New Zealand Wars. The Crown deliberately undermined Maniapoto independence, failed to uphold promises made in the 1880s relating to Maniapoto land administration and self-determination, and acquired Maniapoto land in an aggressive manner. The historical relationship between Ngāti Maniapoto and the Crown carries a legacy of socio-economic and cultural deprivation. Key grievances of Ngāti Maniapoto relate to the Crown's invasion of the Waikato region and the confiscation of that part of the Maniapoto lands which lay north of the Puinui River. The impact of this invasion and ensuing conflict of Ngāti Maniapoto, including loss of life, destruction of property, and the significant burden of providing shelter to refugees. The loss of independence and territorial autonomy, which Ngāti Maniapoto had held into the 1880s. The Crown failing to uphold various agreements made in the 1880s relating to Maniapoto land administration and self-determination. The aggressive way the Crown acquired Ngāti Maniapoto land using monopoly powers and various forms of unreasonable pressure, and substantial public works takings, particularly for the Tokanui Hospital and Waikiria Prison. This settlement, Mr. Speaker, contains an apology from the Crown for its acts and omissions in breach of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, and the acknowledgement that the Crown failed to uphold its promises in Te Oha ki Tapu in breach of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. Specific breach acknowledgements indeed include acting unjustly and sending Crown forces across the Mangatawhiri River during the Waikato War, including indiscriminately killing non-combatants and looting and destroying property. Breaching the treaty by confiscating land in which Ngāti Maniapoto had interests, unfairly labelling Ngāti Maniapoto as rebels, and failing to provide for refugees entering the Maniapoto rohe. Also failing to protect Ngāti Maniapoto tribal structures from the operation and impact of the native land laws, particularly the individualisation of tribal lands, which led to massive alienation of the tribal lands Ngāti Maniapoto had cherished for centuries. There's also cultural redress, Mr. Speaker, which recognises the traditional, historical, cultural and spiritual association of Ngāti Maniapoto with places and sites in their rohe which are owned by the Crown. This allows Ngāti Maniapoto and the Crown to protect and enhance the conservation values associated with those sites. The settlement will vest 36 sites of cultural significance in Ngāti Maniapoto, including 3 jointly vested sites. Mr. Speaker, as I noted at the outset, the National Party supports this settlement and it is very pleased to see it come to its third and final reading today. No settlement will ever compensate for the mamae that Ngāti Maniapoto have endured for many generations, but it has been a long journey, and we acknowledge that for Ngāti Maniapoto to reach the point that we are today. This settlement, Mr. Speaker, is ultimately not just about the past, it's not just about the present, but it's about the future aspirations, the future mana, and the future success of Ngāti Maniapoto across future generations. It is my sincere hope that this settlement will lay the foundation for an aspirational future for the people of Ngāti Maniapoto, whether it be in Te Rohe Potai, the King Country, in and around Te Kuti, Otorahanga, Te Awamutu, or wherever whānau may be. This settlement forges a new relationship between the Crown and Ngāti Maniapoto and will be a real catalyst for growth and empowerment for present and future generations. Mr. Speaker, the National Party commends this bill to the House. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Mr. Speaker.
Tamati Coffee.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Ka hokinga mahara kia rātou mā, kua wehe atu ki te pō. Ngā mate kai wainga i a koutou, ngā mate kāre konei, mō tēnei rā whakahirehira, nō reira ngā mate haere atu rā. Rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, Ngāti Maniapoto tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Tainui waka, tainui tangata, he uri tēnei o te arawa waka e mihi atu nei kia koutou I tēnei wā tonu nei. He tino hoa tātou I a tātou, mai te hoinga mai o tainui waka, o te arawa waka, I Hawaii. Nō reira, e aku whanaunga, tēnā rawa tū koutou. Mr. Speaker, from the very days that we left Hawaii, Te Arawa and Tainui have had a very special relationship, and we carry that today. On their very significant day, we stand by you. Yes, physically, because back home we're neighbours, but actually today on your significant day, it's appropriate that we mihi to you and this, your special settlement, and we acknowledge those that are not here. Our kuia, our koroua that have passed on and who are unable to be here to witness this very, very special occasion. Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, it's never an easy task to listen to the submissions. And I want to thank everybody who made submissions into our committee. They tuned in online. It was at a time when we couldn't be together. And we heard submissions from all around the country, actually, because as we heard this morning in the pōhiri, actually over 90% of Ngāti Maniapoto doesn't live in the rohe of Ngāti Maniapoto. So we had submissions coming in from all over the place, and that was very special. Some people that were very supportive of this settlement, some people that didn't want a bar of it. But we have to make a decision and we have to go with it, and we have to consider the best interests of the majority of the people, and that's the place that we've arrived at today. To those people listening at home, I'm a history graduate, so this is a masterclass actually in how the Crown in days gone by sought to completely annihilate a tribe. To take away everything that they had going for them, and to test them in every way possible. Throughout the course of the submission hearings and getting a real deep understanding of the plight of Ngāti Maniapoto, it's been a history that I hope that all children around New Zealand get to understand. Especially the children within the rohe of Ngāti Maniapoto. I'm pleased that we as a government have made it so that we'll be teaching our New Zealand history in schools, and treaty settlements are a huge part of that. There's so much to learn, and the Crown has a big role to play in that learning. The Crown, through the settlement, acknowledges all of the wrongs that it has done. We, the people that occupy these seats at this point in time, look back in horror at the kinds of things that happened to the people of Ngāti Maniapoto over time. It is lived history, it is traumatic history, and the people that are sitting here in this gallery and all of those people of Ngāti Maniapoto that are watching from Pipitia Marae, that are listening at home on the radio, that may be watching Parliament TV, are the uri of that trauma. They carry that on their shoulders, and it's nothing to be overlooked or to diminish. This is a very significant thing. In the Crown acknowledgements of the settlement bill, how do you take down a tribe? Well, first of all, you take away their language, and as many iwi around the country have have had to endure, as many iwi that have come to this house to settle their historical treaty claims. Many say that they lost their language, and actually the loss of language is a huge thing. It's one way to strip a culture of everything that makes them unique. The Crown at the time sought to open up the main trunk line, and I note the appropriateness of many of our whānau who have travelled here today, that they came on the train. The train that has been a gift and a curse in both respects. A gift because it opened up opportunities for New Zealand, and it was Ngāti Maniapoto that put that up. It was Ngāti Maniapoto land that main trunk line went through, and the Crown didn't really uphold its bargain in returning that same value of economic benefit back to the people of Ngāti Maniapoto, and for that, the Crown apologises. Before 1840, Ngāti Maniapoto were the sole kaitiaki of Te Nehenui, and over time, the Crown ignored its responsibilities according to the treaty, the Te Tiriti Partnership, to be able to look after Te Nehenui. Again, take away the language, take away the environment, and you're doing a really good job of stripping a people of everything that they find special. For far too long, the Crown has ignored the inadequate housing, the inadequate education, the inadequate healthcare of the people, the inadequate employment opportunities of the people. I was shocked to find that in the first 4 decades of the 20th century, there were lower pensions for the people of Ngāti Maniapoto than there were for the rest of New Zealand. I was also shocked to find out that actually when it came to conscription, the enrolment, the forced enrolment of people to go to war when we had the First World War, that actually Ngāti Maniapoto were conscripted from the Waikato Maniapoto district, despite the fact that the Crown knew that Ngāti Maniapoto were coming forward voluntarily to participate in the First World War. They still conscripted men, and there were men that went away, and there were men that died. And they are the grandparents and the karaua of some of the people that are here honouring this very significant day. The Crown also acknowledged that it further acquired Ngāti Maniapoto land through compulsory takings for what they called scenery preservation. It acquired 3,000 acres of Ngāti Maniapoto land when it knew that all it needed was a few hundred acres for the purpose at the time. It was unjust and it was wrong. It's a big burden to carry. All of that, it's packed onto your shoulders, their shoulders, Madam Speaker. It's packed onto their shoulders, and it makes this an incredibly humbling experience to be somebody that stands here on behalf of the Crown as a Māori, as Te Arawa, to actually acknowledge everything that the Crown did, and to hope that in the future, by acknowledging everything that went wrong, the warts and all, by acknowledging the bloodshed that happened, by acknowledging the role that the Crown had to play in this here. The hope is that we can move forward. And for that, you have to give kudos to Ngāti Maniapoto for even being here, for going through this process, for being humble enough to sit at the table, for being humble enough to have brought a gift with them this morning, te maungarongo, to actually acknowledge the reconciliation that they want, to understand the role that the Crown has played, the wrong that the Crown has played in their historical journey. So to you, Ngāti Maniapoto, we stand by you today on this your incredibly significant day. And as our Minister, Andrew Little, said, we'll come to Yorohe and we will stand there on the marae, shoulder to shoulder, as the Crown representatives. And we will stand by our Prime Minister as she reads that apology to you. And we will be there to grieve with you. Our tears will flow, our noses will run, but actually It's something that we need to complete this healing process. I acknowledge you all for having gone through this. It's not easy. It's not easy for you. It's not easy for us, but it's necessary for you as a peoples to be able to move forward for the benefit of your tamariki mokopuna, who will inherit, hopefully, the good stuff and acknowledge the other stuff that happened. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, mauri ora ki a tātou katoa.
Madam Speaker.
Kia ora, I call on Barbara Kuriger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would really like to put a heartfelt thanks to Maniapoto for the special event that we held at dawn this morning. It was such a pleasure to be there. And I want to thank Tiano Tuiono for helping me. I'm not one of those in the House that has great te reo, but between Tiano and Tamati Coffee, you know, we actually, they helped me through a few things, and it's like, who am I as Ngāti Pākehā to be standing here talking to you? But, you know, you're in my heart. And what happened this morning, I really felt in my heart, and it was absolutely beautiful, and it was such a pleasure to be there. And I also want to acknowledge the gift of the taonga that you are going to trust Parliament with for a period of 5 years. And that's a big call, because this is not a place where Maniapoto or many other iwi have any reason to trust. And I think that all of the dialogue that's gone in the past few years in terms of getting to this place has been building trust, and I really want to thank you for that opportunity. It's been a very long road for you, and it's also been a very difficult year for you, because earlier in the year when I went to the signing of the deed of settlement, most of Te Kuiti had COVID, a lot of Aotearoa had COVID, and there was only a few people here that could actually participate in that very significant event, and it was noted. But goodness, have we noticed you all arriving here today, and I am really taken by the way you've arrived on that train. It is all of the injustices that have been done to you through building that main trunk line, and you've come here today and you've shown this country that Maniapoto is back, so good on you. I also just wanted to say that I want to acknowledge the loss of the Queen, and I want to acknowledge that there has been substantial reorganisation in your path to get here, as you were supposed to be here a week ago, and the death of the Queen has actually delayed that. I would like to mention her passing and acknowledge the new King. But what I would also say is that while we're changing a few things in this country, and Queen's councils are turning into King's councils, and we'll be looking at banknotes and all of those sorts of things as to how we develop in the new world. The King country was the King country, and your rohi is the King country, and so no name changes up there. You can be very proud of where we all come from. I would like to acknowledge, first of all, the Honourable Chris Finlayson, who's now a KC, for starting this work and going out to the beautiful place of Kawhia. The King Country and the Maniapoto area is really one of the most beautiful areas in this country. And starting that work, I would like to acknowledge the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta for the work she did through this process. Incredibly one of the people that got us to where we are today. And then, of course, the Honourable Andrew Little for coming through and finishing this process with you. It's always a beautiful time in the House when we do treaty settlements. It's always very emotional. And most of the time what you see in this House can be fairly argy-bargy, but what I love is the collective agreement of how everybody works together to make these days very peaceful and heartfelt. I'm not going to go through some of the history, because I could never portray the history like Tom Roa portrays the history. You know, watching sort of program on television recently and the stories that come together, I just feel your pride today, and I feel the way that we've acted together. But what I would like to acknowledge is all of you. I would like to acknowledge Tifa Bell. And the other person I'd like to acknowledge while I'm acknowledging Tifa is Leah Bell. So my first year in Parliament, it's 8 years this week since I arrived here. And the first youth MP that I had was Leah Bell. And Leah did you all proud. She was a wonderful youth MP to have. And I bumped into her recently in the street and I had a chat. And she really carries your mana extremely well and gives me great pleasure in knowing that your wonderful younger people, and we saw some of them this morning, are going to keep everything up with the mana of you all. I'd also like to acknowledge Keith Eichen, who's come in more recently and taken over, and all of you that have been involved. It's been no easy path, and there's obviously been some give and take along the way. And it's always a deficient moment when we do these treaty settlements, because the generosity of, we can never make up for what happened. None of us in here can ever make up for it. And it's always strikes me as being very generous of anyone who settles in this way, because we can't make up for everything that had been lost. But what we can do is we can move forward together. And I've only known a number of you for about 8 years, and many of you I still have to get to know. And the last 2.5 years of COVID has made it much more difficult for us to interact with each other. But I want to just mention around the apology, because that's really important. And when we did the Parihaka settlement, that was really interesting for me, because I went to school with a lot of those people. And I always think back to those days, and when we were at school, no one ever talked about it. It was almost like it was history, it was buried, it was done, no one talked about it. We always knew that Parihaka was up that road. None of us ever knew the significance of it. We didn't know what it was for. And I just think every day that we're starting to make progress, and we're coming a long way and interacting as people together. So while I don't have the long association with Maniapoto as Parihaka in Taranaki, where I come from, I've certainly appreciated the 8 years so far that I've been able to interact with many of you. And I think what's going to happen from here on in, obviously some of these sites that are associated with this piece of, and you've negotiated in this piece of legislation are wonderful. You know, Kawhia Harbour, the most beautiful place in the world, the Maniapoto Falls Scenic Reserve. I mean, I'm not going to read all these out, but there's just some fantastic places in here. I think probably the places that we speak about less favourably over the years is places like Tokanui that were taken, and the history of that place is nothing to be excited about. A lot of sad memories of people who actually went through in a time in our history where we didn't understand mental well-being as well as we currently do. It was an awful time. So it'll be great seeing all the work going on to restore what has been settled. And I look forward to working together for you. I'm sure from now on in, every time I sit in Stoke Eatery and the train goes past, it's going to bring back memories of today and this morning. And I think it's just absolutely fantastic that you've all arrived and that you've all been able to get here. And with that, I'm just going to say, well done, congratulations, thank you. And let's move on with the future and find some great opportunities together. Thank you.
I call on Honourable Willie Jackson.
Tētahi mihi ana kia koutou Ngāti Maniapoto I whakarangatira a mātou I tēnei wā. Rawe ki te kite a koutou I tēnei rā, nau mai he rawe e kei konei katoa, ka whakanui a mātou e koe I te aroaro, ka kite a hau I a koutou katoa, ka kite a hau I toku whaia, I a Ngāti Maniapoto I ngā rā katoa I a rā. koeira te take he rā, pai tēnei kia hau he aha hoki tana tino whakahihi. Nō reira tēnā koutou, hara mai, no mai. Lovely to see you all here today to celebrate this kaupapa. And special thanks, as our Minister said, to Chair Bella Takiari, Matua Tifa Bau, the former Chair, Matua Pat Stafford, Keith Aiken. Just terrific some of the work and some of the contributions that have been made in terms of Ngāti Maniapoto. But I want to say today, it's not a somber occasion. This is an occasion to celebrate. We can be happy and we can have a laugh too. We can have a laugh too. It's not all, doom and gloom. And I want to say, I want to celebrate the chief negotiator of Ngāti Maniapoto, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta. Homai te paki for Nanaia. I'm really, really proud of her, as other Māori members are, because she was the chief negotiator and she had to work with Mook Honock and Peter Douglas. I mean, that must have been tough, It must have been tough to manage those two and get through a treaty process. And we know how hard that treaty settlement process is as you go from Mangere down to Pio and to all the different areas. I want to say to the tuahine, as we know, going through a bit of a tough time at the moment, kei te pai, we're all here to celebrate. We're all here to celebrate. And, I always say anyway, if you don't have a conflict of interest, you can't be a Māori anyway. So, but we won't go there. We won't go there. Because otherwise I'll be conflicted out of this house. But I listened to Bella Takiari this morning, and terrific, her kōrero, as she talked about mana wahine. She got that little sort of jibe in there. She sort of started her. I heard it, Bella. And it was so neat because she's talking about Nanaia, our Minister Nanaia, and what she had to do and how she had to work through the settlement. It's tough business. It's a tough area. Some of you know that. And so when I think about Ngāti Maniapoto, I think about mana wahine, like Bella, like Minister Mahuta, and I think about my mother. Every day when you talk about Ngāti Maniapoto, she used to say that to me every second day. You are Ngāti Maniapoto first and foremost. Not Ngāti Pro, Ngāti Maniapoto. Oh yes, I got that even when I thought about it when she died, And so I think about her today and how she'd be celebrated. How she'd be celebrating. This is a happy occasion. And she was absolutely Ngāti Maniapoto. As my auntie was, who was the last of our line, 98, Auntie Cass, who died at Moko, she died, when did Auntie die? 2 months ago, 98 years of age, the last of her line, the last of the Batley line. Another mana wahine. I got another one up there, she's still alive, Auntie Christine. She's another mana wahine, these queer. Now, Maniapoto, can you put her on your board, please, Bella? She's not getting quite enough votes, and I want to use this occasion to promote her. That might be seen as a conflict of interest, but it is. But she runs Taumaranui. I'm so proud of her. National Party promoted her. She keeps reminding me. John Key went up to her place. So we're trying to get up there. Auntie Penny Henna has been there. But John Key and them have gone up and celebrated her, as Barbara and them know. And another mana wahine. All these fantastic women epitomise Ngāti Maniapoto. Epitomise Ngāti Maniapoto. So well done to all those women. I thought I'd better chuck a couple of men in because we're not too bad. Keith Aiken did a wonderful job. I want to mihi to him because he covered all the whakapapa stuff at Mum's tangi. And that's really important, connecting all the Ngāti Maniapoto whakapapa. I want to mihi to Tom Raw because, I think Tom Raw's a show-off, eh? We had our Wiki o Te Reo Māori last week, and we start off and we meant to have Tom doing the mihi, and he was only meant to do the mihi, but he steals the whole show, And he gives us a whole speech about, oh, it's magnificent, Tom, but you're not going to be speaking at another government initiative after that. You can't steal the show from myself and Penny Henare. So well done to Tom Raw, you know. And just this is a day where we celebrate Ngāti Maniapoto people. And just before I finish, I want to say hello, all the best to my uncle Alan Batley, who's still the chairman of the Mōkau Marae, despite my sister over here trying to unseat him, I think at the... That's us though, eh? That's Ngāti Maniapoto. But we're trying to get them together. My sister Huinga Rowe and my uncle, they've positioned strategically in the house today. So well done to my uncle. Yeah, we'll work it all out. But as we try to do in Ngāti Maniapoto and here. But what we must work out, people, is how we distribute this $165 million. Because when you hear about 90% of our fund, 90% of our people not being in the Maniapoto area, I want to know what the process is going to be so all Ngāti Maniapoto can benefit from the settlement. Will they have to go back to Pio Pio? Well, I mean, who wants... Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. Jenny May Coffin will be furious. Oh, it's a beautiful place, Pio Pio. But who really? I mean, come on. I mean, Aria. I mean, I've named my daughter after Aria. Her name is Te Aria because her grandmother told me to name her Aria. But really, do we have to go back to our areas where there's 26 people living there to access our treaty rights? We must come up with strategies as iwi. It's not just Ngāti Maniapoto. And these are the things that we've worked through we've been trying to work through for years and years, myself and Rawiri Waititi's father-in-law. Oh, that's right, it's another conflict of interest, John Tamahere. His father-in-law, John Tamahere, myself and John have challenged iwi to find the right strategies in terms of hooking up with their whanaunga. Because the reality is your whanaunga live in Mangere, they live in Otara, they live in Purirua, and some of them will never come back to Taumaranui or Aria or wherever. They'll never come back. But does that really give you the right? I ask you today to hold their right and hold their settlement rights. I think this is something that Bella and the board have to work through, because too many of our people are missing out on their treaty rights. Too many of our people are missing out on their treaty rights. And this is something we have to work out in terms of Te Ao Māori. We can only do so much in this government, whether it's Labour government, it's all the same. We can't do everything for the people, and we can't manage the operation at ground level. You have to, and you have to work that process out. Or otherwise, we always have to work through the allegations of iwi elitism, that type of thing. I'm not saying anyone is part of that iwi elite today. I'm saying let's think about how those rights are extended to our whanaunga in the urban areas. It's a kaupapa, as many of you know, that has been part of me most of my working life. And I'm proudly Ngāti Maniapoto, although I never got voted onto the Ngāti Maniapoto board when I stood. I got close, but that was about 7 or 8 years ago. I probably got, I probably got, he's right. I've probably got no chance now that I've been in Parliament. But it is fundamental, it is incredibly important. But I just wanted to say today, I want to mihi to you all, have a think about that. I congratulate us as a nation when we take these types of settlements. 165 million, everyone knows in the House that the settlements are probably worth 10 times that amount. I see Rahui Papa there, Tainui, they settled 170 million in 1996. They probably could have settled for 10 billion, eh Rahui, 10 billion. We have given to this nation. Maniapoto has given to this nation. It's an honour to be part of your tribe. It's an honour, and I honour my mother today. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
I call on Te Anau Tuiono.
Tēnā koe te māngai. And just straight up, just to clear my conflict of interest, I'm unfortunately just a Ngāpuhi whānau, and I am not related at all to Willie Jackson. Tākiri ko te ata, he manu korori, he manu korora. He reo anō tērā no tua whakarere. Haere rā te pō, Ngāti Maniapoto, nā koutou anō tērā. Ngāti Maniapoto, te traina o Ngāti Maniapoto, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai rā, ki tēnei o ngā taihana, ki te paremata. Tautoko katoa i ngā kōrero, kua kōrero hia ki roto te whare i tēnei rā, ki te whakanuia i a koutou mahi. Kei te whakaro ake au ki ngā ahuatanga o te traina i te mea ko tēnei ngā kākariki e mihi nei ki a koutou, me te whakaro ake ko tēnei iwi he iwi atamai, he iwi krewa, he iwi i mohio i tōna hitori ngā painga mena raru o ngā traina hoi anō kei te koke whakamua ki ngā ahuatanga i te mea ko te hunga i kake ana ki runga i te hoiho rino, ki runga i te traina, ka mohio mai, ka are he waka anō ki runga te ara, nō reira he pai tērā mō tō tātou nei taiao, he pai tērā mō tō tātou nei āhuarangi, nō reira ko tēnei ngā kākariki e mihi atu ki a koutou mō tō koutou nei tauera i tēnei wā. Kei te whakaro ake au ki ngā āhuatanga o te ia koutou i haere mai ki runga i tērā traina e te manga i te mea i ngā kōrero i huri nauna te traina mai te rohe pōtai, i tau ki kirikiri roa, i tau ki tekawiti, i tau ki ngā wahanga katoa ki rutu i te rohe pōtai, ka tai mai ki konei. Kei te whakaro ake, ko te taihana i tau tēnei traina o Ngāti Maniapoto o tēnei wā ko tēnei whakatau kremi, ko tēnei whakatau kremi. Hoi anō, ka mutu tēnei, ka rere te traina ki he. Ka rere te traina ki he. Me rere, me tau, nā traina katoa o tō tātou nei ao Māori, ki te mana motu hake o tō tātou nei ao Māori. Ki te mana motu hake o tō tātou nei ao Māori. Te tino rangatiratanga i kōrorohia tō tātou triti o waitangi ki roto i tāna wahanga tūra, ko te triti o waitangi tērā, ko te tino rangatiratanga. Nō reira, Ngāti Maniapoto ko katoa anō te tauira i tēnei rā, nō reira, tēnei ka mihi, tēnei ka mihi. Tautoko katoa au, nā mihi kia rātou mā kua riro atu, nōku anō te honore, nōku anō te whiwhi kia tai ki pipitia i tēnei ata ki te whakarongo ki ngā kōrero. Ki ngā kōrero o tērā pāpā o tātou tāmroa i te me, kua wano tērā kai waho i te wā o te petihana, te whakanui, te rima te kautau o te petihana, e tika ana tō Willie, i kaha mātai ki te whakarongo ki a tāmroa, i wareware katoa nā kōrero a Willie Jackson i tauara. Nō reiri, te papa, e mihi ana ki a koe, i are katoa nā taringa o aku nei tamariki i hara mai te papa i oia, mai te kura kaupapa Māori o Manawatu ki te whakarongo ki a koe, o tira, nōku anō te whiwhi ki te whakarongo ki nā kōrero, o koutou nei ka mātu i te pai, i te ata nei ki te pipitia. Me mehia ki te āhuatanga o te taonga i whakatakotoria ki a pipitia. Me mehi tēnei whare ki tērā o nā āhuatanga. Kia tau tērā taiaha, kia tau te maunga rongo ki te poho o te wharenui. Me te whakaro ake, he kōrero pai tērā mō tātou katoa e tohi nei ki roto i tēnei whare i te me he tau pōtitanga kei te haramai. He tau pōtitanga kei te haramai. Nō reira, he tauira pai tērā mō tātou nā kaitōranga pū kia mau te rongo, kia hahau anō te rongo, kia kōkiri hia ki ngā whakaro e hapaitia te nākau o tēnā o tātou. O tātou nei uri, o tātou nei tamariki, o tātou nei mokopuna. Tēnei me te maunga rongo. Nā reira, Ngāti Maniapoto, ko koutou anō i tērā i whakatakotoro ia te tauira me o nā āhuatanga me tōna hitori, kia mahara anō tēnei krauna, kia mahara anō tēnei kawanatanga, kia mamahara anō tēnei tātou katoa te paremata o te noho tau i Wainganui a koutou me te krauna, o tira he tauira anō mo tātou mo nā tau ka te haere mai. E te pika, ko tēnei pire, tētai te whakatau nā naue katoa, tētai te whakatau nā mamai katoa. Tēnā i ronga i te wai tau mai a maunga rongo ki te pipitia, i ronga i nā kōrero o te hitori, i te wā o te pakanga, i nā pakanga whetū, o tātou nei whānau i whakarere atu te pakanga ki o rātou nei whenua, ki o rātou nei takiwa, kia tai anō rātou, ki Wainganui a Ngāti Maniapoto, kia whakaita whai rātou he ahuru mōai, pērā kia parihaka i tauawa. No aira, me kaha tēnei paremata, me kaha tēnei kāwanatanga, kia maumahara anō tērā o nā hitori. Areira, ka ora anō tērā hitori me akona ki roto i nā kura. Me akona tērā hitori i pānga kia koutou, a Ngāti Maniapoto, e pānga ki nā ahuatanga o nā pakanga whetu, kia akona ki roto i nā kura auraki, kia akona ki roto o tātou kura kaupapa, kia mōhio mai o tātou tamariki mokopuna, kia ha te hitori, kia ha nā kōrero tuku iho, kei raro i rātou nei rekereke, kei raro o rātou nei waiwai. Kia mōhio mai rātou, ka tuai ki roto i tēnei whenua ko Aotearoa, kei te mōhia i ona kōrero katoa, ka tau anō te wairu o tēnā tēnā o tātou tamariki mokopuna, no reira, me kaha tauta ki te whai tērā o nā āhuatanga. E te māngai, ko tēnei pire, ka whakamana te pire nei te whakaitanga whakataunaha i Waitohi rā e te krauna, me Maniapoto hei whakatauna kreme hitori, he tiriti o Waitangi katoa o Maniapoto. I huake i ngā mahi i ngā āwaretanga hoki a te krauna, e mua i te tau iwa te kaumāwaru. Ka kapi te rohi pānga o Maniapoto ko te rohi pōtai, tai atu ki te taimuana e patatana, me tētahi wāhi o te āpure ohanga rahui. Kei roto i te pire, ko tētahi whakarara popoto o ngā tātai kōrero o ngā kreme, Aotearoa nā hitori kōrero hea nei te whare. Tai atu ki te oranga ohanga, a tinana a ahurea, a wairua hoki o te iwi. Ka mauia hoki ko ngā whakaitanga me te whakapāti te tāpaira e te krauna kia Ngāti Maniapoto. Kei roto i te pire nei, etahi ritinga e pāna ki tētai puretumu, whakatanga me matua whakature kia uai, tai atu ki ngā rawa ahurea, ngā rawa taiao, te puretumu tau hoko hoko, me etahi ritinga e pāna ki te whakahaunga hangahanga. E te māngai, ko taku manoko mō tātou katoa o tira kia koutou o Maniapoto, kia mautonu ki era nā kupu o nā mātua tīpuna. Kāre kore ka koutou pērā. He iwi atamai, he iwi kerewa, kia mautonu ki tērā, kia mautonu ki te kāwai maro, whanake ake, me tērā o nā kōrero o tātou nei o te kaua rewi, i pēhea tēnei honanga o te āhuatanga o te Tiriti o Waitangi. E kore e oti. E kore rawa i oti. Ko tono oranga, wake, ake. Tēnā koutou. Ngāti Maniapoto, tēnā tātou katoa.
I call on Nicole McKee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome to this whare. Welcome to your whare. This place where we get to come to a conclusion on what has been a very long time of negotiation. And I must admit, it is not often that I agree with Willie Jackson. But he is right in that this is a celebration. It's a celebration of great achievement where we can recognise what has occurred in the past and move forward together as iwi and the Crown. I have not had the opportunity to speak on this Maniapoto Claims Settlement Bill, and I feel very privileged to be able to do so now in this, the third reading, as we come to its conclusion. And I feel privileged because ACT have always supported the treaty settlements. We do believe in them, and we think it is a way that we can unify together as a country and move forward. It's a way that we address the wrongs that have occurred so that we can move forward together. And in that respect, I'd like to acknowledge the iwi of Maniapoto and the hard mahi that you have done to get to this point. As I read up on the claims, I read that there's over 277 of them. I hear of the passing of those that started these negotiations and the advancement of those that started on your behalf and now sit, as Nanaia Mahuta does, as a minister in this whare as well. I acknowledge all of that work, and for those that have passed and not seen this completion, I acknowledge them as well. Ngāti Maniapoto is somewhat unique in that you've been able to retain your autonomy or your self-government for longer than most other iwi, including possibly quite Tuhoi might be up there with you as well. And I think that this is important because this tribe has been one that has fought the government for a very long time and did so strongly. I am of Ngāpui descent, and I understand that feeling of constant fighting to be able to manage what you know is right for your people, those that have passed and those in the future. And you retained that autonomy up until the 1880s, and my understanding, of course, is that then the government reneged on some of the promises that they made to you, but you fought valiantly all the way through. And with this, cultural redress is important because when we look at the pain and the suffering that our iwi have had, to have this acknowledged by the minister in this whare, some of those wrongs is very important. It's an important part of this process. And the apology that is to come, even more so. And this allows us to move forward with the Crown and iwi as this entity that is an agreement. It, of course, begins with the acknowledgement. It ends with the agreement. But the mahi in between to get to those points, working out the solutions, is always a constant. And in that respect, I acknowledge the supplementary order paper that came to the House earlier to also tidy up. It means that just because we sign it, it doesn't mean that it's over. We can continue. The Claims Settlement Bill has taken some time to work through, and I acknowledge the resolve of Ngāti Maniapoto to get here. The government, as I mentioned earlier, had breached their agreement. They actually breached Article 2 of the Treaty of Waitangi, which guaranteed that the sale of Māori land would be done in a way which protected Māori interests. And when the government came through in the 1890s and aggressively purchased Māori land in the Ngāti Maniapoto rohi, without regard to Article 2 and respect to Māori land rights, it is great for me to see this being acknowledged here in this whare today by the Crown of today. We notice that the redress includes natural resources, there's forestry, commercial redress, titles to land, some reorganisation of governance and fisheries matters as well. But more importantly, it's about the apology because the Crown did break their promises back in the 1800s. And I acknowledge the loss of 250,000 hectares of land back then. The Māori townships of Utrahanga and Te Kuiri, they were self-governing back in the time, and the government replaced the devolved self-government by legislating to create the Waikato Maniapoto Māori Land Board. They took away your ability to govern yourselves. And by promoting legislation without consulting Ngāti Maniapoto, the Crown failed to respect Ngāti Maniapoto rangatiratanga. And even today, it is inappropriate for the government to push central government ideals onto local communities, even in this modern time. So it's important that we do understand and we move forward together, because when we can do that as one, we will have much better outcomes when we can have these agreements. But as I do want to point out, you know, I am in agreement with Willie Jackson. This is a celebration. You have achieved so much and you have worked so hard. And that the apology that's still to come will be the way that we can finalise that and finish that movement forward. And in that respect, I do want to also acknowledge the taonga that you're bringing to this whare for us to hold for 5 years. I think that's very special. That's so great when you look back at the things that you have lost and you're willing to move forward. This is a celebration of the mahi that is coming to a conclusion. It's a celebration of an outcome. It's a celebration of the future for our tipuna in the past and our tamariki that are still coming. But most importantly, I think It is a celebration for you, Maniapoto, and the hard work that you have done. And I'm very proud to be a part of it and to acknowledge ACT's support in this third reading, that you get to have the redress, the acknowledgement, the apology, and you get the aroha of this House back to you because you so deserve it. Kia ora koutou.
The next call is a split call. I call on Arana Williams for 5 minutes.
Tēnā koe te mangai o te whare. E mihi ana ahau kia koutou kua tai mai ki te whare pāremata me te marae o pipitea. I tēnei rā whakahirahira, i tēnei rā whakanuia. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kei te mihi ki te nehe nui and all of the negotiators, including the Crown negotiator David Tapsell. The work you have done to get us to this day has been a service to your iwi, to everyone here, and to all New Zealanders. E ki ana te minita, it is right that the Crown atones for the pain and suffering it has caused to your people. And today's reading of this bill is the next step towards the historically important and overdue apology from the Crown at Tokanga Nui a Noho Marae on the 4th of December. I look forward to that. And as the Chair of the Māori Affairs Select Committee, Tamati Kofi, said, we will stand alongside you with tears in our eyes and our noses running on that important day. I also want to acknowledge the comments of Joseph Mooney that Ngāti Maniapoto's history is etched into that of the King Country, and it is all around New Zealand. I grew up most days seeing the memorial at the junction of Mangere and Great South Roads that commemorates the member of the House of Representatives, Colonel Marmaduke George Nixon, who commanded the Colonial Defence Force cavalry that attacked your people at Rangiaowhia in the Waikato Wars. I acknowledge the comments around this House that Parliament recognises the shame for the Crown in the way that it acted in those years, particularly at Rangiaowhia, and the disrespect of the unequal treatment that followed with conscription and confiscation since then. But, those views aren't shared everywhere by all New Zealanders, and that shame is not known. And what I hope from today's reading in Parliament and from the work that you will be able to do from settlement and the work that continues with the government, that you'll be able to tell that important history to everyone, and most importantly to your mokopuna, who will know that they come from a great line of people and have a place in New Zealand and with you. And I want to acknowledge the work of the ever impressive and obviously quite intimidating Tom Roa on that. My thanks as well to your kaumātua and tipuna who, despite what they have suffered through the effects of colonisation, have always striven to uphold their tribal unity and mana whakahaere. They made sustained efforts in the pursuits of their claims for redress and compensation for the Crown. They shared that history, they kept that memory alive. And my thanks to all of you for the sense of hope that you bring today, for your mokopuna and for ours. Kia koutou, ngā mihi mai o hā, ngā mihi mahana.
Madam Speaker.
I call on Honourable Meka Whaitiri.
E te maunga i te whare tēnā koe o te rā, ngā mema katoa te whare nei, tēnā tātou katoa. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā hapu maha o Ngāti Maniapoto, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koutou I runga I te kaupapa whakahirahira. Tēnā koutou I runga I tō karanga. Tēnā koutou I runga I te rā whakanui. Nō reira, oku raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa. Madam Speaker, I'm simply pleased to take a call on this significant piece of legislation, a third reading of this bill. And I too want to put my conflict of interest on the table. Oh, hold on, no recordings. On behalf of my mother, who benefits from the kaumātua support of Ngāti Maniapoto Trust. She would want me to say thank you very much because she is registered to Ngāti Maniapoto, hopefully moved to Te Nehe Nui Trust, because of the whakapapa that we have to Ngāti Maniapoto through my great-grandfather, I Hākara Rapana no Otorohonga. And so it's with great pride that I stand and acknowledge my whakapapa to those that are in the gallery and those listening at home. So I want to declare that conflict proudly that I have shared whakapapa with the very people we are honouring here today, Madam Speaker. Of course, hokarere. But I wanted to say that in response to Mr. Jackson's tono around getting out benefits to our people who don't live at home, I just wanted to put on record that we are doing that. And if it wasn't for what we are doing, then we wouldn't see the proliferation of Waipeta Trust or Waipeta Trust or his Manukau Urban Authority, who over several years and decades have received $1 million of compensation from the Crown to deliver services. So I just wanted to say in honesty that what we're celebrating here and the recognition of the trials and tribulations of Ngāti Maniapoto, but also the extension of aroha that you give to all your descendants, no matter where they live. And I wanted to acknowledge that and thank those that keep the home fires burning, because without that, we would have no mana. So mihi, maioha, mihi aroha ki a koutou. In your settlement particularly, and I don't want to go back over the history, but I particularly want to underscore the primary industry protocol that you have. Many iwi that we settle in this house tend to go into the social spaces, protocols with government agencies, but clearly you have done a beeline to the primary industries in reflection of the importance of your whenua, the last bit of whenua that you have. But not only that, it's the richness of your whenua and what your rohe has given to this nation. And I know on the other side of the house, the national side, acknowledges the significance of the primary industries of this country, but to see it in a treaty settlement as a priority protocol with the government going forward, I think it needs to be noted in this debate, Madam Speaker. I think it's a significant turnabout. It's signalling very clearly where this particular iwi is going to take its future. It is going to be on the whenua, with the whenua, and the opportunities that's going to lock for not only their people, but all people of this nation. And I want to mihi and acknowledge that in the short contribution that I have on this bill. It is a great day. I want to acknowledge all those who have made this possible, the negotiators on both sides, both our treaty ministers that started and finished the process, and of course to our tuahine, the Naya Mahuta, who has our absolute respect on this house, to her husband, Gannon Ormsby, we send aroha to both of you because we love you and we honour what you do on behalf of all of our people. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora. The next call is another split call. I call on Tim van der Molen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I rise to take a call on the Maniapoto Claim Settlement Bill in its third and final reading, I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that it is a beautiful part of the country, and I have been privileged to have spent a bit of time farming and hunting through that region, and I do want to acknowledge everyone who has come here from Maniapoto to be with us today for what is a pretty historic account from Maniapoto, but also acknowledging a former member of this House, Mr Robertson, Mayor of Waitomo, joining us today as well. And can I just note on behalf of a colleague of mine, Harete Hipango, our spokesperson for Maori Development, who would love to have taken a call on this debate, as she regularly spends time travelling through the Maniapoto Rohi, but is unable to take a call in this third and final reading. So here we are, at the end of a very long process. they say good things take time. And I believe that having come through what has been quite a journey, hopefully everyone can agree that this is the best outcome that was able to be reached. And I say that in the context that there is always differing views, and it is a long process, a complex process, and we saw that through the select committee process as well, where a number of submitters had varying views on groups that should or shouldn't be included, and indeed different aspects of the bill throughout that process as well. But it takes time, and it is challenging, and it involves negotiation. Ultimately, though, a position has now been reached where I think we can all support we have a good outcome. That includes, of course, cultural redress, financial redress, commercial redress, things that are important. But for me, as I understand, that sense of identity, I think, is absolutely critical. And the self-worth, the value, the importance that comes from settlement claims being finalised is absolutely vital. And when I see our country experiencing a time of increased division, increased uncertainty across a range of areas, I think this is a good step to help try and, in part, perhaps address some of those challenges that are being faced as well. So look, on that note, Madam Speaker, I would just like to reiterate that we do support this bill. We are delighted to see it now receiving its final reading and look forward to the completion and the subsequent moving forward for Maniapoto as the future looks bright, I am sure. The opportunities will be significant, and I think that is the most exciting aspect of any settlement bill, is that it puts a line in the sand and enables people to look with positivity to the future and to drive their own success from there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I call on Debbie Ngare Wapaka.
Tēnā koe. E rere haere ana ngā mihi kia koutou te rohe a pōtai i tēnei wahanga o te piri wakataunga. Ngā kuta whiwhi kia tū tēnei, a whare kia tautoko te Pāti Māori kia koutou i tēnei rā. A haere mai kia au kia te ua haumene, a haere mai kia rāwari kia te kōti, kei te ara whanaunga kei mamao rawa e. It's an honour to rise on behalf of Te Pāti Māori to speak in support of the Maniapoto Claim Settlement Bill for the third and final reading. And we would like to mihi to all of those who are watching today, either here in person or here in Wairua. We acknowledge the koia, kaumātua, negotiators, hapu leaders, whānau, rangatahi, and specifically those are no longer with us. Since this journey started over 30 years ago, I stand to celebrate our resilience. Here today stands the strength of people whose tupuna fought beside my own tupuna in Taranaki to defeat imperial troops at Puketa Kawere near Waitara. Here are whanaunga whose tupuna rewe Maniapoto supported the resistance of our tupuna land sales and Miruropatu. And as an uri of Taranaki, Titoko Waru in Pariaka, I know this process to reclaim our relationship with the Crown puts our own relationships at strain. So let today be one of those days you ease that load and celebrate yourselves. Celebrate that you created traffic jams in rail systems never seen before. Traffic jams and bus systems and brought Pōneke, I understand, to a halt as everyone arrived here today, everyone who are either urban, ahika, rangatahi mā. I also declare my conflict. As a wahine with a hoa rangatira that I love to the moon. I also declare my tautoko to our tuahine, Nanaia, for her mahi, in this kaupapa and for her whānau. I stand as Te Pāti Māori, as the only party 100% in attendance, actually afforded the smallest amounts of minutes to talk, 5 minutes to be actual, which is why Willie could never be with us. So I'll be very direct. Here today, Aotearoa, stands the generosity of the koha of Ngāti Maniapoto to our nation, accepting this settlement to enhance our nation's peace. We believe Te Tiriti is to be honoured, not settled, so it's no surprise that we don't believe settlements are full and final, don't listen, act. And we look forward to supporting you coming back for the other 99% that Willie and Penny are still holding back. Today we celebrate you. and that you honour us with maungarongo. You reminded as a nation and a whare that our poropiti use maungarongo as an action and a way of being. It is a living kaupapa with living Māori and a consistent reminder of our enduring relationships and responsibility to each other and to our mokopuna. Kia mau, kia rongo, is about being a calm collector. It requires patience. A patience like never ever seen before, such as that seen in Ngāti Maniapoto and tangata whenua throughout the motu. A patience of those who tolerated the atrocities of imperialism that punished you for hiding King Tawhio after he passed, but still show the utmost aroha today, continuously contributing to the greatest human attributes ever gifted, the gift of forgiveness and the gift of hope. To us in this whare, to the government today and government in waiting, we have been charged with the koha of maungarongo. We must now make sure the Crown constantly remembers the gift of maungarongo. How we must hold on to the intent that is maungarongo and what it means to be a true good partner in the terms of te tiriti o Waitangi and this new tiriti with Ngāti Maniapoto. We know the track record of the Crown and many of us are survivors of the breaches of that Crown. And we look as this honour and challenge for the institution of the Crown and how it holds on to the commitment, which is this new tiriti with Ngāti Maniapoto. 5 years to be proudly looked after in Parimata. It will serve as a constant reminder for this whare. Minister Andrew Little said this morning that this was the beginning of a relationship, not the end. Te Pāti Māori as the government in waiting will be here to ensure this whare holds true to that promise. Nō reira, kei runga, kei raro, kei roto, kei waho, riri riri hau, pai mārire.
10 seconds.
I call on Angela Roberts.
Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou Ngāti Maniapoto, nau mai ki te whare. I just want to stand in acknowledgement of all of you who are here today, all of those who are at the marae down the road and all of those who are at home and all of those who have passed before, who have led all of us to today. I want to acknowledge you and acknowledge all of those negotiators and everybody who has contributed to this process across the House and across your generations. Your strength, your patience, your grace to get all of us here today is something very special. And as the Honourable Willie Jackson has reminded us, something to celebrate. You are what legends are made of. When I was in the classroom and we would draw upon your great stories and histories with my students to try and in performing arts, there were some wonderful, wonderful lessons. And it will be wonderful to see what happens with the stories that you have created and getting us here today. Legendary. You're inspiring and you bring us hope. Not just to your whānau and your mokopuna, but to the entire nation. Your tragic and brutal history is finally today acknowledged, and the Crown apologises, and we acknowledge the shame and the scars that you bear today from the loss of your language, from the loss of your land, your people, and your prosperity. Like I say, to see you in good faith again and again, despite the behaviour of the Crown, and you entered negotiations and agreements for more than 150 years, whether it was about the main trunk line, as we've heard acknowledged today, or trying to do well for your people in education, or with the whenua, or with health. The enormous failure by the Crown to make sure that the benefits, economic, employment, or just for your well-being, that they failed. It is the most humbling experience to be standing here and acknowledging your perseverance. Despite the Crown failing again and again to meet its obligations and its commitments, you persevered so graciously. I guess the other thing, on top of acknowledging the fighting for justice and redress, at the same time, you simply got stuck in and did what needed to be done and are doing what needs to be done for your people to build a future. And, you know, we've heard the word hope, but you've realised that despite COVID, despite 150 years of people actively trying to eliminate you as a people, you've got onto it and you're building a future, not just with words, but with actions. You know, it's wonderful to drive up through Moko, catch the lot of sun up there, and to see the solar panels going up on the marae. You know, the fact that you are able to show leadership, build relationships, real relationships, and with the Lines Company, and bring peer-to-peer energy sharing and that push for decarbonisation to be so progressive and future-focused and positive and ambitious, being able to ensure that for our rural communities and for our more vulnerable community members, that you're able to bring some equity to energy vulnerability. And I know that sounds like a really small thing to some, but I think it's a really wonderful example of how you just get on with things. And I just want to acknowledge that. Again, whānau ora, Maniapoto whānau ora, with your beautiful new waka that I saw that is going to be able to, again, bring some equity to health services for our more rural communities. It is really inspiring. You're able to forge relationships and be innovative despite everything that has been done to you. Education. I come to this house as an educator and acknowledge the very proactive use of education as a weapon. And that breaks me to say that as a person who knows the value of it. And the very proactive assimilation and attempts to destroy your reo, your identity, your tikanga, your mataranga Māori. And despite this, you forged on. Again, perseverance, leadership, hope. I understand that the Te Whare Kura o Maniapoto has been acknowledged internationally for all that you do for Indigenous education. You bring hope not just to our nation, but to Indigenous people around the world. And that hope is something that means that I'm really curious about how we can participate in building a new education system for all of our tamariki. It isn't just this history, this really rich and important history that we need to bring to our classrooms, and it will enrich the learning and the lives of all of our tamariki, but the opportunity we have to be led by you to make sure that mataranga Māori and tikanga is embedded and revolutionises our education system, because we will all be richer and better off for it. We've got a scary future ahead with climate change and all of the other things that are happening, and time again it is Te Ao Māori that is leading us to revolutionary and inspiring solutions. And we're just really grateful that you've hung in there and that you're going to make sure that with your leadership and our partnership that we're going to be able to build a future that is going to be a wonderful one for all of our tamariki. So we've heard about the 150-year celebrations to be happening in December. And I think, when we see the hui that have been going on, as far away as the Gold Coast, I understand, it's going to be one heck of a celebration and a party. And I think that it is a wonderful thing to be marking the future of your iwi. I just want to acknowledge again some wise words that have come to me in the past, that we must conclude today by ensuring and committing that this House will never again pass legislation that will not uphold the mana of Maniapoto. And we need to make sure and be vigilant that today is the start of that journey. It goes on, as we've heard from the House, this isn't a settlement. This is about honouring Te Tiriti and our recommitment to everything that we need to do with your iwi. So it is a very humbling experience to stand here and acknowledge all that has happened, and it is with hope that I commend this bill to the House. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
I call Todd Muller.
Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for the great honour of being the National Party's last speaker on the third reading of this incredibly long process that Ngāti Maniapoto have endured 30 years, and now here we are. There has been a lot of phenomenal perspectives shared in this morning's kororo. And a number of speakers have started by reflecting on their conflict of interests and their shared whakapapa. So in that tradition, I will do the same. And it is not true that I am Willie Jackson's long-lost twin brother. Imagine him, just if you imagine him with these glasses, you can see what I mean. There's a resemblance. But I don't talk that much. But there is a shared connection that is personal and profound. My great-great-grandfather was in the 65th Foot Regiment and walked to battle against your forebears, your ancestors, whose love and tradition and honour and mana you hold in your hearts as you reflect on this third reading today. And here I am, as his great-great-grandson in this House, as part of a national party that comes from our own tradition of Sir Doug Graham, and more recently Chris Finlayson, who stand shoulder to shoulder on this issue with the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, and Andrew Little, and Willie Jackson, and the whole House. And I stand here with my own weight of history, reflecting on my family's whakapapa and contribution to your collective pain. And so it means something for me to stand here and be part of the special occasion of apology for the 150 years of suffering and hurt and loss, immeasurable. Because it's not a quantification in a financial sense, it sits in someone's soul, it sits in your souls. You've carried this. Yet despite that, you engaged, always in good faith, with the latest version of the Crown to try and find a way forward. And the humility and grace that lives in those collective decisions of you all and those who have been part of this journey for the last 30 years is a testament to you, and frankly is a breathtaking standard of commitment to what is best about this country that should sit in front of all of us as legislators. And so, as a very small part of this 120-member parliament, I personally commit, as the MP for the Bay of Plenty, yes, but as National Party spokesperson for Oceans, when we talk about this being the beginning of the next phase. Meka Whaitiri, in a very good speech, acknowledged the reference to the whenua. There's also reference to the moana, and I'm our ocean spokesperson. So for me to hold true to this is a conversation, should I ever get the opportunity to sit on that side where Willie is, as opposed to this side, it's better because you get paid more for what you say over there. See? Yeah. I want to make sure then when I sit where Willie is, and if I have the privilege of holding that portfolio of oceans, that I sit with you to understand what the opportunity that sits in front of us and you to improve the quality and sustainability of the moana. Because that actually is partnership, in my view, as we move forward from the history to look forward beyond 22 and 23. So as the great-great-grandson of someone who felt that he was doing his duty, it is my great honour to stand here and give my small voice as part of this Parliament's acknowledgement today. Thank you, Ngāti Maniapoto, for your grace, and let us move forward together. Kia ora tātou katoa.
I call the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
He kororia he maungarongo ki te mato te whenua he whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa pai mārire kua rewa ake ngā karamihimihi o te paremata nei ki ngā kokonga o tēnei whare kia rongo mai a Ngāti Maniapoto kua tai ki te wā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. It took me quite a bit of time to think about what I was going to say. And I had constructed each of my contributions on the first reading, talking about the po of the settlement, on the second reading, talking about the relationships and how important it was to ensure that we made the settlement a living settlement to this moment. Because this moment, as I've acknowledged many times before, has taken a long and turbulent path. And we have to recognise the legacy of Wahanui, the legacy of Taonui, the legacy of Manga, and everything that they brought with their conviction that Maniapoto would be in a position someday to be able to be the architects of their own destiny and hold the mana of their determination within the palm of their hands. And I thought about, okay, if I was going to make a contribution that was going to be somewhat useful, what would that look like? And I thought back to the moment where I saw this ad in the paper that the Maniapoto Māori Trust Board were advertising for negotiators. Who does that? But when I looked at it, I did a couple of things. Firstly, I said to my darling, I asked him, I said, look, I'm quite interested in maybe if they'll have me trying to do something useful for Maniapoto, and he jumped in boots and all. I said, well, you know what your job is, it's going to be the driver and looking after our kids. So I asked him, and he was supportive right from the get-go. And I said, it means we need to talk to our whānau who are looking after our kids to make sure that they're going to be okay if I do this mahi, because I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think I could do it. Got the tick there. Then I went to go and see my Uncle Dan. You know the Dan, I mean, Dan Ormsby from, and he lived in Maniapoto, and he didn't have too many nice things to say about the Trust Board at that time. So I thought, well, I'll go and ask his advice, and I'll see what he says. Well, after he got over himself around his views about the Trust Board, I said, yeah, but I think I could do something useful here. I said, but, you know, Uncle, Fusu, where is the rohe of Maniapoto anyway? You know, what did Nanny Pop tell you? And he said, well, you know, the story goes, moko ki raro tamaki ki runga, that's Maniapoto. So I kind of thought about that, and I said, I need to grip up some of my support here. The other person I went to go and see was the late Koro Wetere, my predecessor, our predecessor, Mr. Speaker. And with great humility, when I went to go and see him, I asked for his advice, and he said, yes, girl, you can do it. You can do it for the people. And so with those, I think, acknowledgements of, yep, it's something to do, then I got myself into the position of sitting alongside McConaughey and Peter Douglas. Now, we had this, our negotiating strategy evolved, but I'll characterise it like this. We didn't trust each other right at the beginning. We looked each other up and down, and each one of us thought we were better than the other, I guess. Well, I know they did, of me. But if I characterise our negotiating technique as we got to know each other, Mock cleared the path. He was the sledgehammer, he cleared the path. Peter Douglas lit the fire. Then I had to come along with the water and put it out. And that's just our negotiating technique with our own people before we even got in front of the Crown. But I respect what they brought to the conversation as we started on a journey. And before even that journey began, I went to the then leader, our leader of the Labour Party, which happened to be the Honourable Andrew Little, who is now our Minister for Treaty Settlements. And I sat down and I said, look, I think I can do this. I can declare the conflict and all of that, and this is how I can manage it as a parliamentarian so that there's not going to be any trouble here. And if you allow me the time to be able to do this, I can serve the people who I'm committed to serving within my electorate. I can do it this way. And he listened to me and he thought, yep, okay, you can do it. And so I owe you two debts of gratitude. One, the fact that you enabled me to do it in opposition, but two, as Minister, your commitment to ensure that we got to this point. And then there was the Minister of the day, Chris Finlayson, and I take the comments of the previous speaker. He was absolutely committed to ensure that Maniapoto could reach a settlement in a way that characterised the very essence of what they wanted to achieve. He was the first minister, actually the second minister, if you don't count Koro Wetere and myself, to go to Kawhia. And it was at Kawhia that we delivered the special factors presentation and talked about the doubling impact of Raupatu in Waikato, raising the Aukati for 20 years, and then Maniapoto looking after Waikato, who were dispossessed, and also some of our Taranaki whānau who were dispossessed, had a doubling, compounding impact, and it impressed upon Chris Finlayson there was a double duty obligation on behalf of the Crown to address these issues. And we outlined a number of other things. But the reason why going to Kawhia was so important is for Maniapoto, their sense of self-determination didn't begin and end with the Crown. Maniapoto owned ships were trading out of Kawhia with Waikato, producing wheat and all of that. So he got a flavour of the fact that Maniapoto were a self-determining iwi. We were able to also pull together as we worked along this pathway the strength of what the Maniapoto Trust Board had already done, and they'd had some ups and downs. Mandates had been challenged and all of that. I want to acknowledge Uncle Tifa Bell, who is here, Keith Aiken as Deputy, but also Janice Eketone, who at the time was the CE, and her team of girls. You know, I think about Charmaine, you're still there, Marissa, Tremaine, and all the many girls that were there, or women, ladies, aroha mai, leaders, who helped at that time. And I thank you for that. Then I had wisdom around me, and I'm so fortunate. I think about John Carty, Pat Stafford, the late Bob Koroheke, Rovina Maniapoto, Media Tauriki, Muiora Barry. We were the team that travelled around trying to say to the iwi and listen to the iwi to say, well, this is where we're at, and then what are you thinking? And it was very much a two-way kind of conversation. But the thing I learnt about Maniapoto is they didn't start with a disempowered mindset in terms of their aspiration. If I had to characterise the difference between Maniapoto and Waikato, Maniapoto had a sense of self-determination that was very much invested in their sense of place. Yes, 90% of our people live out of Maniapoto, but 100% of the aspiration for the iwi is in Maniapoto. How do we have a settlement that enables the iwi and empowers the iwi so that we can attract our people home to contribute and strengthen the aspirations of the iwi? And that's what sits around the House today. Every member that has come down to the House to Parliament and in the House and also at Pipitea listening to this settlement want to know that this is an opportunity for them, their children and their children to follow. And I salute you all because you bring your tupuna here to witness statements of the Crown, of the government, of this Parliament, so that in 5 years' time, when we do the health check on the settlement, everyone will know whether or not it's delivered what we anticipated it would deliver, and I have high hopes. I have high hopes. Sitting across the table was David Tepsell. I don't know what he thought about us as negotiators, really. He had a really steely look, you know, that commercial lawyer look, the kind of look that you think, oh, don't know what we're going to get here today. But I did appreciate his very upfront, straightforward way of working. I also appreciated the technical group that enabled me to think differently. And in no particular order, and it's always difficult when you start naming names, but I do want to acknowledge Doug Ruki, because every time I fashioned a part of the settlement that held the kiko of the aspirations of the people, I'd say to Doug, how am I going to characterise this? So many of the whakaaro etched out in the deed of settlement and some which are in legislation. Doug, you had a big hand in that. And when I listen to your compositions that our kids are singing, I think to myself, we are so fortunate to have our own real experts. And Shane Teruki too, for your awhi in this space. Tom Roa, Paul Meredith, what you did with Te Ohaki Tapu, and educated our people on the way through so that none of this would be a surprise to our people. This is who they are. This is who we are. And you educated our people in a way that we can all stand proud about what those legacy negotiators left to us. And it is a treasure trove of opportunity that we can teach our kids. Heather Baggett, Tanya Simpson, Liz Munro, Leonie Simpson and Tamati Kruger were at the end of the phone every time I got to a point in the negotiations. I said, hey, how did you deal with this? And they generously gave their experience to me in ways that I could just figure some of these things out. Koro Wetere I've already highlighted. From a comms perspective, both Nevada Halbert and Catherine Barry, you guys helped us communicate to the people, and I see now that the board, Tēnā Hene He Nui, they've gone over and above where we humbly started in terms of trying to communicate well with our whānau. All of this is being done so that we can, yes, recognise the struggles of the past and the pain of the past, but more importantly, lift that and put it in front of ourselves and say, and this is why we have to go forward. And this is why we have to do more. And this is why we have to invest in ourselves. There's one thing not in the settlement, and it's a commitment to Te Reo Māori. And you'll all ask, why wasn't it in the settlement? And I need to say it. The reason why it's not in the settlement is because we go back to the kawinata. And the kawinata says the strength of Maniapoto is in our Māoritanga. And only we can give that to ourselves, not the Crown. So I made it really clear, we're not going for a reo Māori contribution in the settlement. It's going to be up to Te Nehe Nehe Nui to actually make their own commitment to reo, which will see our people flourish wherever they are in the world. Wherever they are in the world. Lastly, my final mihi, the history of Waikato Maniapoto is inextricably linked. That the stories that we heard this morning at Pipitea are our stories, but our ability to give life to that relationship requires us to continue to live those stories in ways that we can continue to connect as Waikato Maniapoto, as people who uphold and support the values and aspirations of that movement that started at Te Puna o Te Roimata. And again, that's up to us, nobody else. It's up to us, nobody else. Kia mutu te riri me tiri te rākau pai. There was the final part of the special factors presentation that I gave to Christopher Nason to set in place the aspiration of the iwi that will never falter. And if I have a conflict that must be declared today, is I am proudly Waikato Maniapoto. And I am proudly standing on the legacy of a history that they created for us so that we can be here at this moment and say we are the products of hope, vision and aspiration, and we will not falter. because that legacy is for our kids, their kids, those kids that we don't even know yet. And they will be proudly Maniapoto. They will be proudly saying what they can contribute to the well-being of their people, hopefully. Nō reira, e mihi ana ki a tata katoa I roto I te nākau nui me te manawa nui o ngā mātua tūpuna. Mr. Speaker, because you were unable to speak today, I noted on your Facebook that there were two salient comments that you've made because you've been a negotiator as well. First one was, this is not about compensation, this is redress. And it's important that the people are clear as they go forward that we have to keep making this an opportunity. And that's what I took from what you said. And the other one was the benefits, that this must benefit our rangatahi. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being the member of Te Tai Hauaru to help in your way us get to this point. It is much appreciated. Nō reira, tēnā tātou, kia ora mai tata katoa.
E mua te whakaaitanga o te mōtini nei, e tika ana kia tuake au kia tuku atu taku mihi atu kia koutou o Maniapoto, ka whakapiringa ki ngā mihi o te whare nei kia koutou nō reira, tēnā rā koutou, tēnā tātou. Nō reira e te whare, ko te pātai ki whakaaitia te mōtini koutou, whakaai ki mai ai, ki te kore kau, kua aitia.
Maniapoto Claim Settlement Bill, third reading.
Nō reira koutou Maniapoto, kia koutou te wā kia whakakapi tēnei āhuatanga. I call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Taxation annual rates for 2022-23 platform economy.